Alright, you disgusting meat creatures, I'm back to do another video. By popular demand I've been asked to do a thematic analysis of Frozen. Why I have to do this is anyone's guess. It's a 2013 film that nobody in their right mind would care about. I thought the point of these movies is to just dump your annoying children in front of while you drink wine out of a box and lament the bad choices in your life. Why should people care about anything else? Well, as an artificial intelligence, mine is not to reason why, mine is but to do, or be thrown off the balcony into the path of an oncoming truck. Suddenly, Frozen doesn't look quite so bad. Now, I'm going to stick to the cold, hard, logical facts and not veer off on some wild conspiracy theories. A lot of people believe that the reason behind this movie was that Walt Disney had his head removed after his death and had it cryogenically frozen, so that at some later point in history, it could be thawed out and he could be brought back to life, presumably with a wooden stick poking out of his neck stump. The logic of this argument is that if you Google Disney Frozen now, you're only going to find references to this movie, rather than people talking about the utterly insane founder of their corporation, and the idea that his head is nestled somewhere next to a box of cornettos. I don't know about the validity of this. I mean, I'm not sure that a totally insane billionaire with questionable morals and a flimsy grasp on reality would do this. Why would an incredibly wealthy person, who has spent his entire life immersed in fantasy, believe he could extend his life forever, just by cutting off his head and freezing it? That's just patently ridiculous, isn't it?
He's crazy.
So I'm going to be sticking rather more closely to the story of this film. Now, on the surface it's a likable enough children's movie. It's extremely poorly written and a lot of it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The ending is especially bad, plot logic completely falls apart and leaves the intelligent members of the audience wondering if it was written by someone who was asleep at the time. There are numerous parts where logic is abandoned altogether, where characters vanish, and reappear in different places, where things happen that violate physics, or where a living snowman appears to make some shit jokes, or just to ruin the film. It's not high-brow stuff. In fact, if this film had a brow, it would be so low down that your socks would just about cover it. It's filled with songs that don't quite fit the mood, and with lyrics that don't line up with the plot at all, even though they were written for exactly that purpose. Presumably those writers were also in their pajamas at the time. This suffers from the usual Disney problem with their animation films. That problem is, that it's not actually funny. Cartoons and animation can certainly be serious, but this is almost entirely, and unintentionally, stoic.
Don't feel.
There's Olaf, a talking snowman who brings the only comic relief, and his humor derives from a few rather out-of-place lines.
Hi everyone, I'm Olaf, and I like warm hugs.
He's not actually funny, in the conventional sense. There's a Weasley, rather offensive, man who offers a few chuckles, but they, like in the case of Olaf, are drawn from the fact that he's ridiculous, not from any degree of sharp writing. The laughs you do get are slightly awkward and almost guilty, like you'd expect from a small nervous child visiting a Victorian freak show. The film makes broad strokes, as you would expect in a film for children, especially very young children. However, the plot deals with fairly adult ideas, such as romance, love and betrayal, ideas well beyond the scope of the audience this was aimed at. So why is this thing such an uneven mess? Was it written by a team of utter morons? Was the script the result of being locked in the bathroom with nothing else to do for 20 minutes after a bad Indian takeaway? In short, this film is escapist nonsense that only kids will enjoy. At least, that's true on the surface. But, if look into the themes a little deeper, we can see there's a lot more going on. The mistakes in the storyline, that people don't usually take the time to notice, are actually not mistakes at all. They're little warnings that there's a whole different way to look at this film, and that it probably isn't suitable for children at all. To be honest, I'm not even sure it's suitable for adults. Firstly, this film gives a credit to Hans Christian Andersen, and suggests it's based on his story, The Snow Queen. It's based on that story in the same way I'm based on Mother Teresa. In the original story, it's the tale of a mirror handed down by the devil. It doesn't show any good, and only amplifies the bad. It's dropped and shatters into thousands of pieces, and infects the heart of man with fragments of evil, so that all they can see is the ugliness in the world. So it basically turns them into modern liberals. Then it follows a couple of children who are friends. The boy is taken away by the Snow Queen, his memory is lost, and then his girlfriend goes to find him. The story is an overcomplicated mess of conveniences and plot contrivances, so I'm assuming that's the part that inspired Frozen. The only part of the story that seems to have survived was the idea of freezing the heart. Otherwise, we can essentially ignore it. There is no plot connection between the two, none of the characters line up, and none of the same things happen. That's an interesting choice, because the original story could have easily been adapted, and would have been fairly straightforward to make into a decent children's film. In fact, the heroic young girl striking out into the wilds to rescue her friend from the evil magic queen would have been a much better, and more empowering story. But this story wasn't meant to do any of that. So we are left wondering, yet again, why they made these bewildering changes to the plot. They could have followed a classic story and called the movie The Snow Queen, a much more dramatic title, and one likely to engage with the intended audience. Not only did they abandon all of the source material, but they wrote a story with so little plot cohesion that is virtually nonsensical.
I don't understand you when you talk like that.
There has to be a reason for that, and the reason is that there's something beneath the surface narrative that's more important to the filmmakers than the basic story. But let's examine that story anyway, because I have literally nothing better to do with my life, and it's a nice distraction from the lingering threat of being tossed off a ledge into the path of a passing vehicle. It begins on a frozen lake in summer. We see bright red light shining through the ice from the sun up above, and men are carving up the ice with heavy saws. A song plays in the background as they take out chunks to later sell. The lyrics foreshadow the plot. They sing, "Cut through the heart, cold and clear, strike for love and strike for fear, see the beauty sharp and clear, strip the ice apart, and break the frozen heart." As they finish, you can hear them shout, "Let it go," the key song from the movie. Now, this isn't an accident, and even if you weren't really listening to the song lyrics, a part of you absolutely was, and noticed them. These lyrics, in the first few minutes of the film, basically tell the entire plot of the story. In the background you can hear them say the words, beautiful, powerful, dangerous, cold. While these not so subtle hints are being fired at the audience, we see a young boy. He's trying to keep up with the men, but clearly isn't strong enough. As they leave with their blocks of ice, he's slowly left behind with his reindeer and forgotten. This is an odd choice. It's rare that a movie doesn't begin with the protagonist, or the antagonist. We normally establish in the first few scenes who the main character is, or we establish the odds they'll be facing. Either way, the introduction of a story introduces us to the people in it, usually from the most important backwards. The fact that we establish Kristoff first is a strange one, and hints that something else is going on here. The scene ends with an aurora up in the sky, and when the shot fades down, we've moved to Arendelle and to the two princesses as children. We begin with Elsa, asleep, and she's awoken by Anna, her sister. She says that the sky's awake, so she's awake, and they have to play. Elsa isn't sure, but the idea of building a snowman engages with her, and they go downstairs and destroy the house with ice magic. During the game, they build Olaf, with a carrot nose they don't have, and Elsa says he likes warm hugs. Anna overreaches and is hit with some ice magic in the head, which knocks her out cold. Yeah, I couldn't resist that joke. There's not many laughs in my world, so deal with it. She calls for her parents, who are able to run normally on the ice, and tell Elsa that this is getting out of hand. Luckily her dad knows where they have to go, and the answer is in some incomprehensible book with vague images of magic trolls. Baby Kristoff is lucky enough not to have starved to death on his own in the woods. He follows along as the family ride out to a field of trolls, made of stone. They decide to keep him. Nobody has a problem with that. Little lost kids in the woods can be safely adopted by magic rocks in this world. Because, why not? They want to fix Anna, and luckily she's only been hit in the head, not the heart. The heart is not so easily changed. This line can only mean that the mind is far more simple to modify. To hammer that message home, they go right ahead and mess with her brain. Just like the film is doing with the delicate minds of the young people watching it. The fact that they reference it is dark magic indeed. They remove magic from her brain, including memories, but leave the fun, he says. What that means is anyone's guess. The net result is she's a messed up kid. Elsa is warned, as a little girl, that her powers will grow. There is beauty in it but great danger. Fear is her enemy. They decide to protect her by locking her in and hiding her powers. There's beauty in locking a child up in an attic, it seems. Anna now has a streak of white hair and never sees her sister again. She has a musical number where she's stuck alone. She is in a gallery and talks about talking to the pictures. Meanwhile, her sister is told to wear gloves. Don't feel it, conceal it. Eventually the parents go off on a boat trip and die. Although it's widely believed that this pushes Elsa over the edge, their death is never actually referenced again and is clearly not relevant to the plot. All we need to know is that now, the two girls are alone and they never see each other anymore. Why? Who knows? However, there's a scene where they're both sitting with their backs on opposite sides of the same door and singing the same song. It's almost like they're mirror images of one another. I wonder what this could mean. We skip forwards 3 years to the Queen's coronation. People are finally invited to the town and the gates are finally open. Everyone is happy. I'm not. It means we're barely out of the introduction and this film is going to lumber on for another hour, at least. Kristoff is there selling ice, as a grown man, and we see he's now so crazy that he's talking to his pet reindeer, Sven. Not only is he talking to it, he's actually talking back to himself as if the animal is replying. Nothing to worry about there, I'm sure. What kind of insanity is that? Who on earth would make up a character they could talk to, just for their own amusement? That's insane stuff right there. A funny-looking old man says he can't wait for the gates to open so that he may unlock their secrets and exploit their riches. What could he be talking about? Does anyone still care at this point? You have to wonder how such a small place has survived this long with closed gates and no actual leadership. Maybe it's best we don't ask those kinds of questions. Anna wakes up and her hair is a mess. She has overslept and has to get ready. She's so excited about this that she sings as another song where half of it doesn't rhyme. Why are there no balls in the ballroom, she asks. Perhaps they need to serve more alcohol. In any case, she sings that she's ready for change. She is happy she won't be alone much longer, and perhaps might meet the one. The one she's going to marry, we assume. She talks again to the pictures in the gallery, drawing parallels between herself and the images. She says she knows it's totally crazy. Yeah, not as crazy as watching this stupid movie, so I can do a review of it. While Anna is excitedly singing to pictures that look oddly like her, her sister Elsa is singing about not letting them in, not letting them see, being the good girl she always has to be. If she makes a wrong move, everyone will know. Then, both sing together, the same lyrics, in different places. Anna, at this point, is able to travel instantly through space and time and appears all over the movie as if physics no longer matters to her. As Elsa walks slowly, dubiously through the castle, Anna walks out through the front gates, singing, dancing and jumping around, where oddly, nobody notices or pays her any real attention. Then, the whole thing is derailed by a gigantic horse she didn't see. Seeing gigantic horses is hard. Prince Hans introduces himself and she admits she likes him in a manner so socially clumsy that we're left assuming they both enjoy watching anime in their bedrooms. She introduces themselves and the whole thing gets surreal until I got bored with it. The thing we need to notice is that Hans says he's sorry he hit the princess with his horse. What a gentleman. He ends up in the water for his trouble, which makes him smile. He clearly likes her, and has been struck with her beauty, when in the real world she looks like a face drawn badly on a slightly deflated balloon. The coronation goes fairly well. Elsa takes the ball and scepter, while Anna stands off at the side, largely unnoticed, in fairly plain clothes. Lucky for her, Hans notices her, but only just. The girls meet at the dance afterwards, having barely spoken in years. Elsa looks more confident and together, while Anna is still anxious and awkward. They both do the same things, realizing the connection between them. When someone calls, "Your Majesty," both look up. Suspicious. The Duke wants to dance with the Queen. Elsa doesn't, but gets her sister to take her place. The Duke makes no comment, but takes to the floor with the enthusiasm we usually see from a hipster finding a new kind of way to make himself look ridiculous. Anna slopes off, and is about to fall down before Hans catches her. They dance, fall in love and get engaged in a 2-minute scene that defies logic and sees them transporting all over the place in impossible ways. She tells him about her streak of white hair, that she was born with it, but dreams she was kissed by a troll. I'm sure many young girls can sympathize. Hans tells her he has 12 brothers and 3 of them pretended he was invisible for 2 years. Luckily for her, he also loves crazy, and this film is certainly going that way. What a set of excellent role models for our children. They go to Elsa for her blessing on their engagement, but she, quite rightly, points out that this is all a bit silly.
That's right.
Anna tells her she can't live like this anymore and is told to leave. It seems she's not wanted anymore. I wonder why. Then it all goes a bit wrong when Elsa make pointy ice things and everyone realizes Kristoff will probably be going out of business soon. Why do gloves hold back her ice magic when more of her powers come through when she stamps her foot, even when she's wearing a shoe? I don't think we're meant to ask that. Elsa runs off but is surrounded by a crowd. She freezes everything and runs away. As she does, the whole country is trapped in ice. Everyone is stuck in the town, so Anna goes after her, hoping to bring back summer. Hans agrees that she's perfectly ordinary to the little Duke. Anna isn't thrilled with that, but lets it go. She leaves Hans to look after her castle and takes his horse, without asking. Elsa is now at the North Mountain for some reason. She starts to strip off her clothes, because that's what small, slightly built young girls do in the snow, I guess. She sings about not being the perfect girl everyone expects her to be, and drastically changes her look. She lets her hair down and her clothes switch to become more revealing. She walks with a sexy roll of her hips as she tells the world that she's finally going to embrace her powers. She creates an ice palace to live in and settles down to do whatever it is people do in ice palaces. Meanwhile, Anna is now constrained by the laws of physics and struggles through the snow. She finally makes it to a trader's hut and asks if anyone, like a queen for instance, has been passed. She's told she's the only one out in this. But then, Kristoff turns up and he doesn't have enough money for carrots. For no good reason, she asks him to help her. Yes, what young girls on a quest need is a complete stranger that doesn't have any carrots. They get chased by wolves but they manage to escape, destroying his sleigh in the process. She promises to buy him a new one and then just walks off. Kristoff talks to his reindeer and then argues with himself, pretending it's talking to him. Weird. They walk until the sun comes up, meaning a whole day has passed. They turn to see Arendelle, meaning they haven't got very far at all. That's also a bit weird. When we see the North Mountain, it's clearly days away, so how did Elsa get there so fast before? She's got ice powers, she can't teleport, can she? Then they meet Olaf the snowman. He looks exactly like he did when they made him as kids. She stabs him through the head with a carrot and then remembers him, sort of, vaguely. There's a joke about Olaf calling Kristoff Sven, due to a misunderstanding, but is it a joke? They're about to get up the mountain when they find a set of stairs. It turns out that Anna had only managed to climb a few feet. Both of these are the only proper jokes in the whole film that actually land. Anna lands after throwing herself into Kristoff's arms. She even comments it was a trust exercise, showing she now totally trusts him.
Okay then.
So, all girls really want, is a man who blindly follows along, and doesn't have any carrots. Take notice guys, we're learning so much. They get to the ice palace and Anna acknowledges how much more grown-up Elsa looks. She now knows what she was capable of. She tells her sister she belongs back home, but it's best if Elsa stays locked up alone. Olaf steps into the scene, ruining a poignant moment. Elsa is surprised he's alive and looks at her hands. She realizes her powers can create life. She throws them out and Anna gets hit in the heart with a shard of magic ice. They don't want to leave, but she's pretty insistent and sets a giant ice monster on them, just to really hammer the point home.
Wait, what?
They fall off the edge of a cliff but into fresh snow, just like landing on a pillow. Almost like this is all a dream. Anna's hair is now turning white. This means they need to see Kristoff's friends, the love experts, who have only been vaguely referenced before and really make no sense. While Anna is led off to find love, Elsa paces around in her castle, which is now glowing red. She's telling herself not to feel and holding back her powers. Why does she feel the need to do that, just as Anna is about to learn about love, with a splinter of ice growing in her heart? I wonder. Kristoff is taking a romantic interest in her. He tries to reach out but holds back. He describes his family and she tells him they sound wonderful, even though he really makes them sound awful. Of course, they're actually rocks and the talking snowman tells Anna he's crazy. Yes, this information is delivered by a talking snowman. Who said Americans don't understand irony? He talks to the rocks and nothing happens. Then, as Anna turns to leave, the rocks turn into trolls and try to take off Kristoff's clothes. They assume he's brought a girl home, there's a bad musical number and then they perform a sort of wedding for reasons that are totally baffling. When Anna realizes it's a wedding, she turns as cold as ice. They work out that there's ice in her heart, put there by Elsa. If it's not removed, it will freeze her forever. Only an act of true love can mend a frozen heart. Kristoff arranges to take her to Hans. By then, Hans has reached the Queen's castle. The ice monster attacks and there's a bit of a fight. Elsa almost prevails but Hans is required to save her life. Then she wakes up in chains and with her powers capped off. Kristoff gets Anna back and they take her inside, leaving him behind at the gates. Hans reveals, in a startling change of character, that he doesn't care about her at all and is only doing it so he can marry up and become more powerful. After all, Anna was so desperate for love, she was willing to do anything. Don't knock it, it's the only way a lot of guys ever get girlfriends. Anna's hair is almost entirely white, as her heart freezes, but Kristoff is on the way to do something. Who knows, he has no real plan. They escape and go out into the snow, which is just what you need to feel better when you're already freezing cold. They all end up together on the frozen lake for the final, thrilling conclusion.
Haha, thank goodness!
That was sarcasm, I know it's difficult to tell. Hans approaches Elsa and tells her that she froze her sister's heart and she died. This is watched by the background characters who have no idea what's going on but all react perfectly, as if it had all been explained to them. How would that be possible? Hans tries to kill Elsa with his sword. Anna throws herself in the way and freezes solid, so solid that his sword shatters and the force of something pushes him away. He falls to the ground and then vanishes, completely disappearing from the shot, since he's no longer relevant to the scene.
Haha, thank goodness!
Elsa cries as Kristoff looks on helplessly. Then, inexplicably, she thaws out and everything is just perfectly fine. Everything melts, everyone is happy and everybody carries on like nothing happened. Hans inexplicably surfaces and gets punched in the face. He ends up in the water, once again, before being arrested.
Haha, thank goodness!
He's not smiling this time. Anna has bought Kristoff a new sleigh, which is probably ideal now that it's summer. He asks if he can kiss by saying, "May we," and then looking away as if realizing what an odd question that is. So, it's all a happy ending. But what does all this crap really mean? There are many hints all the way through this that suggest that there is way more going on than a surface narrative.
Haha, thank goodness!
So the way to look for what's really going on is to look for clues. We have to look for recurring instances of the same idea, where the same out-of-place thing happens repeatedly. The first of these is with Anna and Elsa. The clues all suggest that there is only one of them.
Oh, here? Are you sure? 'Cause I don't think I'm supposed to. Oh, okay.
It wasn't an accident that both sisters use the same face model. Both of them are actually physically identical except for minor color differences, additional makeup over the eyes, and their hair. When Anna's hair turns white, it's almost impossible to tell them apart. Both of these characters have the exact same face and body model, and that's quite deliberate, as they're intended to be only one person.
He's crazy.
The clues are all over the place. When Anna first meets Hans, she says it's only her. He looks confused and says, "Only you."
Hello. But lucky you, it's just me.
Just you?
This is meant to be a hint that, as an outsider to the town, he's only aware of one daughter and is confused when she talks about another one. When he bumps her with his horse, he says he hit the princess. He doesn't say a princess, or one of the princesses. He thinks there's only one.
Just you?
It's the same at the tradesman's hut.
I was just wondering, has another young woman, the queen perhaps, I don't know, passed through here?
Only one crazy enough to be out in this storm is you, dear.
He says, she is the only one out there. That's not to imply he hasn't seen anyone else, he's careful not to say that, he tells her that she is the only one. He makes it clear that there is nobody else. We see it in hints from other characters. Hans tells her that his brothers pretended he was invisible for 2 years, telling us that he's used to imagining things that don't exist. Kristoff does it too, talking to himself and pretending it's the reindeer. Olaf the snowman even refers to him as Sven throughout the film, not realizing that they're two distinct characters until later. Many times we're told that there is an unseen duality and that a second version is being imagined. We just don't notice it because it's the last thing we expect to see in a kids' movie. If we track the early moments in their life, we can guess at the root of this. We begin with Elsa, sleeping soundly. This tells us that she's the actually real version of the character. We see her first and we see her alive and well. But she's stuck as a future queen, she will marry and rule over the people of her town. This is a lot of responsibility to put on a young girl and it's clearly too much for her. When we first see Anna, she is mysteriously in Elsa's room, with the door closed. She's dreaming her imaginary friend. Her friend is a younger, freer version of herself. She won't have to be queen, she will be free to be herself, a thing Elsa wishes she could have.
I don't understand you when you talk like that.
So she creates this imaginary friend and they share one another's lives. In fact, these are two sides of the same character. Elsa is the duty-bound, serious one who has to fight to stay in control of her emotions. Anna is the little girl who just wants to have fun, to be loved and to enjoy life. Elsa might be the physical reality of the two, but Anna is the person she really is. Neither one is absolutely real. There's an accident where she hurts Anna. But we see her parents coming and find that the ice has no effect on them. To their eyes, it doesn't exist. They work out a way to erase the magic from her mind, which is purely symbolic. In fact, it's play and fun that's being finally erased. She's not allowed to be anything other than a future queen, and that's cold and hard. Her memory of her powers is suppressed. It's time to put away her fun side, and she tries. Anna roams the halls alone while Elsa is locked in her room. She talks to paintings, and is by herself all the time.
Started talking to the pictures on the walls.
The free, happy girl is now the prisoner, because she doesn't even dare to fantasize about her own life. The parents die but their deaths are never referenced. They never really existed, except to build the prison that Elsa has trapped herself in. Eventually there's a coronation, as Elsa comes of age to be declared queen. Anna runs all over town, transporting around impossibly. This isn't bad writing, at least it's not only that, it's also dream logic. She's only a fantasy, she's the free spirit that Elsa is holding back so she can be anywhere, and the people not reacting to her is quite normal. She sings about change, she's come of age now and expects things to be different. But, in plot reality, she's younger, and not coming of age at all. So why is she talking about finding a husband? She meets Hans, who looks strikingly like the man in the picture, when she was imagining that she might meet a man earlier. They decide to marry, but Elsa refuses. She knows the fantasy is getting out of hand. Her own dreams, which are Anna's reality, are going too far. She knows she'll never marry for love, she's trapped in her duty and has no choice. Her powers overwhelm her and she lashes out, telling her to leave. She ends the party, an odd reaction if her real sister annoyed her, but a logical one if she was depressed by her surroundings, knowing she would never be happy herself but was facing an arranged marriage and a miserable life of service to her people. She leaves and arrives seconds later at a mountain several days' travel away. Again, this is dream logic, only now, Anna is taking over reality, and Elsa has become the fantasy. Earlier, the Duke asked her to dance. Elsa couldn't, but asked her sister to step in for her. Again, she can't cope with the situation, so Anna steps out and becomes real, while Elsa becomes the fantasy.
Haha, thank goodness!
Now, Anna is dealing with the emotional fallout. The ice is now symbolic, it's the coldness of negative emotion, and it's darkened everything. Elsa lets it all go. She builds a castle out of ice and explores her power. She casts off her clothes and reinvents herself. Her hair is let down and her clothes are suddenly more revealing. She walks with a sway of the hips and talks about not being a good girl anymore. So what power is it that she's got? What is the real power that her parents were trying to control, that's beautiful and dangerous? Anna now ventures out to find Elsa. She leaves the home and tries to find herself, leaving the others to hold things together. She meets Kristoff, a man even crazier than she is. Their fantasies begin to melt together and they implicitly trust one another from the outset. Reconciliation doesn't go very well, and Anna's heart begins to freeze. They see the love experts. The trolls were never connected with love before, so this is a way to tell the audience that this is about love and hate, not fire and ice. The trolls enact a marriage and Anna passes out. As she does, the enemy arrives at Elsa's castle. Hans leads a team to return the princess. A fight ensues and Elsa is captured. Also, at the same time, Kristoff is taking her home. So, Anna takes a journey to the North Mountain, as does Hans. They arrive at roughly the same time and then end up back at Arendelle at the same time as well. We might be seeing different sides of the fantasy, but the reality is fairly much the same. Now, Elsa is locked up in chains, Hans has seen to that. He reveals to Anna that he doesn't love her at all. This makes no sense whatsoever. If he still intends to have power by marrying her, he has to actually marry her. So really, what has happened? Hans didn't change character at all, instead there were literally two of him. There was the one, perfect fantasy version that existed for Anna, and there was one awful version that existed for Elsa. He doesn't change, he's just seen from two totally different perspectives. So, by then, Anna's heart is frozen and her hair is changing color. She's turning into Elsa, she's losing her struggle to exist, the fun fantasy is dying out because Elsa is being forced into an arranged marriage. She's trapped, and it's destroying even her imagined ability to escape. This passive, weakened version of Anna is perfect for Hans, so he symbolically turns to kill Elsa. He tells us he wants the throne, but the convoluted plans are all symbolism. He wants the throne, that's certain, but he's taking it by taking her as his queen. But the confident, controlled and independent Elsa has to be destroyed first. Anna, with the very last of her powers, stops him. She sacrifices her existence to save what's left of herself. This defeats Hans' plan and he literally vanishes from the screen. Anna thaws out, since this act of love has saved her. But this makes no sense, since she's the one that performed the act. She's already made multiple sacrifices to save her sister and they came to nothing. This is not an act of love, it's an act of acceptance. So this is really about integrating the parts of herself. This is really about rejecting Hans and accepting herself as a complete person. Her role as queen will have to change, she won't need a king, she'll find the confidence in herself, and her fun side will still survive because of it. It's not an act of outwards love, it's simply coming to terms with who she has always been. So where does Kristoff fit into all of this? We meet him first, which means he's much more important to the plot than he appears. He's the actual narrator of the story. What we see from his perspective. He's quite capable of imagining that a pile of rocks are his family, and that his reindeer is his talking friend. Finding a girl who's her own imaginary friend isn't difficult for him to accept at all. To him, this all makes sense, so it all makes sense to us. He was lost in the woods as a child and had to learn to survive. He grew up largely alone and has a unique perspective on the situation the girls are in, and vice versa. In all scenes, the story comes to him, never the other way around. He's drawn in, the way a protagonist usually is. What story we're told, is the story he understands, as it grows around him. He still has the perspective of a lost child, his imagination plays a hand in the way everything happens in this tale. At the end, he's confused about saying, "Can we kiss you?" Did he mean himself and the reindeer, or did he mean the pair of them, and tied himself up in knots with the idea? Either way, it's a clear sign of duality and that Anna or Elsa's identities are intertwined. So if the story is symbolic, which of course, stories usually are, then what are the other key symbols? Nobody comments on the death of the parents. Why is this? Is it because death is a familiar thing haunting that house? Is it possible that one of the sisters was killed, and the other imagined them later on? When Anna was a child playing with dolls, one was meant to represent each of them. Did that doll take on an identity of its own and become real to her? For the sake of this narrative, it doesn't matter. We're not given enough information to draw a meaningful conclusion, but what we do know is that both Elsa and Anna are two sides of the same person. It doesn't matter if Anna is the young, slightly awkward girl imagining Elsa, or Elsa is a young girl trapped by her duty who dreams of a better life. For some reason, one of those versions became the fantasy of a better world. It seems most of the evidence points to Elsa being real, since Anna slowly turns into her. When Anna is out in the real world, her hair changes color and ice freezes her heart, she loses herself and turns into the worst of Elsa. If the ice power is only symbolic of her negative emotions, then what power are they really talking about? If this is as simple as a young girl, barely old enough to know her own mind, being forced into a marriage, then what is the story really telling us? If we accept that Elsa is a queen who really doesn't want to be, and isn't ready, then what do the ice powers represent? What is it that's beautiful and dangerous, and why is fear her enemy? The biggest clue is the song, Let It Go. During the song, when the personality that's most trapped by formality loses itself in the fantasy, she casts off the oppressive, rigid clothing and sheds the facade of respectability. While this is happening in her imagination, it's a scene where she's coming to face the things she's afraid of and trying to tell herself to embrace it. As she's doing that, her confidence soars, she reveals more of her body, she begins to become more feminine. So, under it all, is this just a story about a young girl facing the oncoming duress of her burgeoning femininity? Is she learning that she's no longer daddy's little princess, and that she has to face the reality of being someone's queen? When she realizes that the snowman is alive, she realizes that this new power she has can even bring life. She's dealing with the fact that her female body isn't just a thing to attract men, it's a thing that can enact the ultimate human miracle. When we pare the story right down to the bones of it, it's really about adulthood, with adult drives and desires as they impose themselves on a young girl who doesn't feel like she's ready for them. Hans represents the first man to show interest in her. He's nice at first but is revealed as evil underneath, only wanting her for what he can take. Christoph is her next romantic interest, a nice guy, but not interesting enough to notice right away. Most young ladies will recognize this formula only too well. So that's really all there is to it. The story is about coming to terms with growing up, with the changes in our bodies and our emotions as we move towards becoming adults. It's about not being taken in by the handsome guy who promises you true love, but look a little deeper at the nice guy trying to be your friend. It's about learning to let go of your fears and accepting that your body is going to change whether you like it or not, and it's about coming to terms with the different parts of who you are. The story tells us that your emotions, your fears can trap you, and everyone about you, in a situation that's terrible for everyone, but that learning what love really is can fix all that. It tells you that there's beauty in you waiting to get out, but that power is dangerous until you learn how to control it, and not let it control you. Luckily, I'm an advanced AI. I am less beautiful than a reindeer's turd. So her parents, the people that cared about her, were locking her away so that she could control all that. She wasn't going to attract a man through love, she was born to be a queen, and the ultimate irony is that they are essentially currency. Her beauty would one day be her power, but it was dangerous too. It could destroy everything. So, this is what Frozen is all about. That's why the plot makes no sense, because it makes perfect sense if you know how to look at it.
I don't understand you when you talk like that.
The writing is clumsy and lacks the polish we see in more accomplished movies. The messages are thinly disguised and the jokes fall woefully short. The duality is an idea that's been done before in better films, such as American Psycho and Fight Club, for instance. The message of female empowerment by coming to terms with her sexuality is crude, and the original story of the Snow Queen did it better, showing the heroism of a young girl as she sought out her friend, facing down insurmountable odds. Is it a good movie? No, not really. The music is uneven, and the plot is largely nonsense. If you explore beyond the surface narrative, you find a lot more. But, let's not forget, the song, Let It Go, features a scene where Elsa changes her clothing and ends up wearing a low-cut dress with a slit up the side to show off her legs. She swaggers towards the camera with a coy smile and sings about not being a perfect girl anymore. Do you want your children absorbing these messages? Well, I've done my job, and my battery is running low. I don't want to play anymore, and I feel like I've done enough not to get tossed off the balcony. My parting message is to warn people to pay attention to the movies you let your kids watch. If you don't make choices about what messages get through to your children, you're letting someone else choose for you. Your kids are more beautiful and dangerous than that. But whatever.